everyone. It's 8:30. I think we're ready to get started. I think I'm still the chair. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know, maybe Dan and Sanjay would love to do this. Go. 8:30. Let's try to get started. I was noticing. Are we waiting on Tiffany? Okay. So let's see here. So we're gonna call this meeting to order, June 2nd, Wastewater Subcommittee meeting. Let me get to our agenda. First, let's see. We'll do roll call. Oh, I'm sorry. Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone, if we could stand and join. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, roll call, please.
Chair, Mr. Anthony Tave.
Here.
Committee Member Maureen Toms.
Here.
Committee Member Dan Romero. Committee Member Tiffany Grimsley. Says not present. We'll record that way. Next item.
1 second. Let me go ahead and read the comments for public, just so we get that on record. Comments received before the close of the public comment period for that item will be read into the record and limited to 3 minutes. Please include your full name, city of residence, and agenda item you are commenting on. Any comments received after the close of the public comment period will be distributed to committee members and relevant staff after the meeting and filed with the agenda packet. So we have approval of the minutes. I think item 3. Just want to acknowledge Tiffany, council member from Hercules, Grimsley is
Thank
here. For the record, sorry about that. We'll go to approval of the minutes.
I'll move approval.
Roll call.
Chair Tave.
Yes.
Committee Member Toms.
Yes.
Committee Member Romero. Committee Member Grimsley. Thank you.
Any public comment on the minutes? Nothing. Doesn't look like we have any. Any online?
No, this meeting is not set up as a hybrid today.
Thank you. Okay, so let's go to item 4, citizens to be heard. Do you have any citizens to be heard?
Yes, we do have a speaker card. And the subject is rooming houses and sewers. Does not have a name, please. Can
We have a
Is the mic on?
Yes. This is about my voice. My name is James Tillman, and I've been a citizen over 45 years here in the city. I've been very active at one time in the city. Due to my illness, I been set aside. But my issue that I want to bring up is rooming houses affecting the sewer. I live on El Toro Way, and that development was built in the 60s. I'm not sure how big the main is, but the capacity of the flow with all the people living in these homes now are renting out garages and rooms and so forth are causing a toilet backup. I have to wait to certain hours to use the toilet because of the flow is so heavy. My question would be, one, I have some questions here till I can find it. You guys moved too fast for me. Here. My question is, how many rooming houses are in our city of Pinole, as well as Hercules? I told you about the sewer main issues, being backed up on certain hours. Can code enforcement enforce the health and safety codes in the public's interest? And that's, to me, is the biggest concern. It is not only that, fire and everything else, but when you have sometimes 15 people living in a home, which is single family, was designed for 2.5 people, it has the engineers designed for that overflow, and you have 5 or 6 or 8 or 9 of them in your area. I live on a court, and that court has quite a few. So that's an issue I like to have the cities to discuss and come up with a solution so I can flush my toilet when I want to at any given time. So I thank you for listening, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. So if we could have Director Mishra and the engineering team kind of look into that. I think what we're talking about is the ADUs and additional sewer usage, see what kind of flows we would be getting. And then I don't know if we want that in memo form. Everybody agreeable or having a comment?
Can we go ahead and allow Mr. Tillman to finish?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought were you done, Mr.
Well,
Tillman?
I was waiting for any comments
Oh.
to me.
Okay, well, we'll collect the
Okay.
comment and then.
Yeah. And I have some notes that later on I will hand into to the wastewater board as well as my own counsel on some of the questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll get those questions and then report back. No, okay, very good. So let's see, we had citizens be heard, so we'll move to item 5 and open that up. Water pollution control plant operation report. Recommendation.
Thank you. Our plant manager, Josh Binder, will bring you through the operator's report.
Okay, the topics for today will include the monthly flow data, the monthly performance indicators, project updates, recent activity, and chemical usage analysis. The first topic is the monthly flow data, and I'll just run through the flow data for the 3-month period, January, February, and March of 2023. So for Hercules, the minimum flow was 0.58 MGD, an average of 2.31 MGD, and a maximum of 5.03 MGD. There's a total for the month of 71.45 MGD, which was 40% of total flow. For Pinole, we have a minimum of 1.17 MGD, an average of 3.41 MGD, and a maximum of 10.34 MGD, for a total of 105.66 MGD, or 60% of total flow. For February, for Hercules, we had a minimum of 1.36 MGD, an average of 1.54 MGD, a maximum of 2.14 MGD, and a total of 43.04 MGD, or 43% of the total flow. For Pinole, For February, we had a minimum of 1.6 MGD, an average of 2.06 MGD, a maximum of 3.8 MGD, for a total of 57.6 MGD, or 57% of the total flow. For March, for Hercules, we had a minimum of 1.69 MGD, an average of 2.17 MGD, a maximum of 3.27 MGD, and a total of 67.12 MGD, or 39% of the total flow. For Pinole, for March, we had a minimum of 2.24 MGD, an average of 3.4 MGD, a maximum of 7.39 MGD, for a total of 105.34 MGD, or 61% of the total flow. These were wet months, so some of the numbers were increased because of storm flows. Are there any questions on this slide?
Councilmember Thomas.
I have a question, is that we haven't met since last June and don't have an idea of the data, what the data looks like in July, August, September, because we've missed the quarterly reports. And it would be good that if we canceled meetings, that we have that data brought up to speed, so we have it on record. So I would request if we can get an email with that data, because my question, overall question here is, these are wet months. And I see that, you know, Hercules, having higher population, only has 40% of the flow. What is that typically in a dry month? And is the result of that because we have so much I&I? Is that really the answer? But I'm not able to see that without having the data from previous dry weather quarters. So if we can get that at a later date, that would be appreciated.
Thank you. We'll send out those datas. We do actually part of the billing, but actually to the committee members will send out those data.
Councilmember Romero.
Thank you, Chair. I guess on the monthly flow, I really question why the use of right to use. Right of use is almost a contractual, and there's never been something set up, especially once we expanded. There's nothing set up, so I would prefer just seeing Hercules and the average MGD, and also for Pinole, and strike the right to use. I don't want to get into the legalities of it, but I was real surprised by that. As far as the flows, what occurs is when you see heavy flows like this in Pinole, and the thing is Pinole's section of Pinole-Hercules wastewater is only 50% maybe of Pinole, and so it's due to root intrusion, and so you know, and yeah, I mean, this is big. I'm frankly surprised, and I mean, and it looks like we did have a lot of rain. I thought that Josh would mention that the system, I think, handled the heavy rainflow that we had in January, February, March, and that's exactly why we did the upgrade to the plant, is to handle that. So I think the plant performed well, but we didn't get into that. But yeah, these are big numbers, but typically I would say that Pinole Hercules is usually anywhere from 50 to 60% of the dry flow in the past. But yeah, to see a complete reversal, and where it's only 50% of the population, I mean, that's big numbers. But I think that goes to say that how do you say it politely, but residents need to probably check, have somebody come out, scope their sewer lines to see if they have a root intrusion, and then carry on from there. But I mean, yeah, I think Hercules started that program years ago. It was a little upsetting to the realtors, but I think it's been successful because we're sort of catching the root intrusion and water influx coming into it. But I would agree, even though we don't meet, it would be nice for us to see that. And more importantly, be more open to the public about that. And you know, if we're not meeting and we get those numbers, I would probably, as a council member, ask that we publish those on the city, you know, during the meeting. So it's in public. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Crimsley.
With respect to Councilmember Romero's remark, I in the interest of transparency, I'm in agreement with making that information available to community members and an effort to control it. I think perhaps we need to pursue something to encourage our community members to be more actively involved they're having the responsibility for individual property checks on root intrusions. So important point, I think.
It's a lot of water.
Yeah.
And it's hard to, I mean, I'm just thinking, we have an old system. I know that we had our sewer master plan just done. Has anybody looked at the hydraulics of the creek? And if any pipes were submerged, and in the event of submersion, would water work back into the system?
No, I don't think the creek has a role to play here. But we do have a lot of I&I. And our master plan, we're actually going ahead with that to upsizing some of our pipes. And if you remember, we had an inspection with the water board, and we are actually going through a TV and all the lines in the city. And we're also, we have this sewer lateral program with the city. It's been there for the last 10 years, and we are actually now sending out letters to all the residents to actually video their line and fix any deficiencies they have. So we're actually continuing slowly up to ramp that up.
I'm just looking at these numbers. I'm thinking it's gotta be something else working into this, like a storm drain collection or catch basin that's
That's the
feeding into the system.
yeah. That's our worry. We think that maybe there is a cross connection somewhere, or during this weather, there is a chance that a lot of some pump, they probably somehow illegally connected to the sewer, and that may be one of the causes. So we have plans to do the smoke testing for our entire system where we think these problems are, and we'll get to those.
Okay, great. It's encouraging to hear. Direct,
Chair, there's a member of the public wants to speak. Do you want them to ask to speak after the report given?
yeah, let's get through the report and then take public comment.
Go ahead, Josh.
Next slide. Okay, so this slide was added at the request of council member Romero, I believe, from last meeting. And it's basically the definitions for the slide that follows this one, the key, the monthly performance indicators. I don't know if we need to read these aloud, but anyone following along could just associate these definitions of the performance indicators with the following slide that has the data on it. Next slide. So I'll read out the monthly performance indicators for January, February, and March of 2023. For CBOD, we had an influent average of 157, an effluent average of 6.95, and a removal percent of 96. For TSS, we had an influent average of 178, an effluent average of 20.07, with a removal percent of 94. For coliform, we had an effluent average of 216. For Enterococcus, we had an effluent average of 17.4, For ammonia, we had an effluent average of 28. On to February, we had a CBOD influent average of 236, an effluent average of 10.47, and a removal percentage of 96. For TSS, we had an influent average of 223, an effluent average of 12.03, and a removal percentage of 95. For coliform, we had an effluent average of 79. In Pterococcus, we had an effluent average of 21.3, and for ammonia, the effluent average was 36. Moving on to the month of March, we had for CBOD, we had an influent average of 149, an effluent average of 6.62, with a removal percentage of 96. For TSS, we had an influent average of 150, an effluent average of 8.36, and a removal percentage of 94. For coliform, we had an effluent average of 60. For Enterococcus, we had an effluent average of 14.7. And for ammonia, we had an effluent average of 26. Next slide. So we'll move on to project updates. The diesel storage tank replacement was completed. The digester cleaning, which included 2 digesters, was completed. The effluent pipe air relief valve replacements, which include 3 air relief valves, is now under contract. The women's locker room is completed, and the treatment plant operations and maintenance manual is still in progress. Next slide. The recent activity section will just cover, the projects that we've completed. And the first project that completed was the diesel storage tank replacement project. These are just 2 pictures from the project. It shows the old tank, it shows the new tank being craned in. Next slide. There's 2 more pictures of the new tank being set in place and the final product of how the new diesel tank is all completed in hard pipe. Next slide. The digester cleaning project, which included digesters number 1 and 3. These are pictures of the project as it was ongoing. The first picture, shows some of the solids being loaded into the truck before it's hauled off. The picture on the right is an example of some of the material that was removed from the digesters as the project was progressing. Next slide. We inspected the interior of the digesters, which looked good, and we had removed, if you look at the left picture, there is a pipe at the top that was causing some operational issues. So we removed this pipe in each respective digester. Next slide. The women's locker room project was completed. These 2 pictures show the construction progress as they're being installed. Next slide. This is 2 pictures of the final project with the shower and the sink and a bank of lockers. Next slide. Is there any questions on the project updates or recent activity?
Councilmember Romero?
Thank you, Chair. When we're doing these updates and as we have a CIP on the plant, I guess my concern is that as we were designing the upgrade to the plant years ago, the commission, the committee, developed a peer review of the design. And so I guess my question is as these projects are coming up, are we going through that process again to make sure that what staff is requesting is one needed, and two, is there pure design? So luckily, I'm old fashioned, I keep things. And so I'm going to pass this on to our city engineer, make copies and pass them out to the rest of us, because I think it's vital, because there was recommendations made to the design, and then we incorporated some of those. And I think it'd be good for all of us, especially staff, to understand what this pure design is. And it wasn't lay people, it was engineers. So it's from December 2013. So it's predates a lot of staff. So I can't blame staff, but I mean, these are these type of documents that will be good for the future. And well, this is what it looks like. And I think I don't know, I'll pass this on, but I think I also have the design book that was being employed at the time. And so all those, again, not to question what's going on, but just to make sure as we're updating the plan, that we're doing in conformance to what was designed. And I guess that is my concern. Thank you.
We'll have copies made and give it to the board.
Thank you. We'll update.
Okay, any questions? Okay. All right, let's continue.
During the last council meeting, there was some questions regarding chemical usage. So I put together this slide that shows the chemical usage from before the plant was upgraded, which represents the figures for the year 2016, and then the figures for chemical usage after the plant was upgraded, which is for 2021. And for 2022, the data represents the chemical usage after we upgraded the disinfection system in 2022. And those upgrades were highlighted, I believe, in the previous meeting that we had. So looking through the data, you can tell that the treatment plant was using more chemicals in 2016. 2021 figures represent an improvement in less chemical usage. And the 2022 data shows that we further reduced chemical usage with the new disinfection that was brought online last year in 2022. Some of the chemicals have had pretty high cost increases over the past 2 fiscal years. So the budget amount that we've budgeted may not reflect a decrease in cost. And the reason for that is, as I mentioned, chemical costs have risen sharply. Chlorine, which is one of our most used chemicals, has gone up 89% for the fiscal year 2022-2023, and is going up again 103% for fiscal year 2023-24. And across the board, the chemicals have gone up. Chlorine has been the highest cost increase, but they've gone up across the board. Is there any questions on the chemical usage slide?
Councilmember Grimson.
Thank you. Appreciate the report and apologize for my congestion here. Can you talk about the impact, if any, with the reduction, other than cost, with the reduction of chemical uses?
Yeah, the first reduction from the year 2016, which was before the plant upgrade, to the reduction in 2021 was as a result of the last plant upgrade project. You know, the disinfection system was upgraded during that project. And the reductions between 2021 and 2022 was a result of an additional upgrade to the plant, which included new process analyzers, new programming for those analyzers to function. We relocated a sample point that was better suited for the process. And due to the result of the most recent upgrades is where we are now, and we're using significantly less chemicals.
Can you speak to any quality impact as a result?
The quality, it doesn't result in a higher quality effluent. We're still meeting our disinfection requirements, and we're still meeting our permit requirements. That hasn't changed.
Do we know, oh, I'm sorry. Do we know any of the, it's great that we did these upgrades so that we can get the chemical costs down, that we're seeing chemical costs go up. Do we know what that's attributed to? Do we see a surge in usage? Or is there a demand just in the region? I'm just concerned that I know chlorine and disinfecting and making sure that we stay within our permit limits could possibly be affected if there's a shortage or something like that. Do we know from our vendors, is this going to cool down? Or is it still going to go up? Should we, I guess my point is, should we be planning for additional upgrades or needs to help reduce the chemical usage?
I think ultraviolet light was considered during the plant upgrade project for disinfection, but that wasn't something that was moved forward in the final design. That's always something that can be considered as an alternative to chemical disinfection. As far as why the costs are rising, the treatment plant is part of the Bay Area Chemical Consortium. So the pricing that we get isn't just for Pinole-Hercules, it's for the entire region, and it's a competitive bid process. I believe there's a market for these chemicals in other industries, and they're getting higher profit margins, and those costs are continuing to increase because of the demand. And they may continue to go up. We were also told that there was one chemical plant that maybe was destroyed due to fire or some other disaster. So that also played a role in cost increases.
Okay. I think we need to keep a sharp eye on that, just because when you hear 83% cost increase, that's usually, kind of indicators of a runaway cost. And if that'll directly impact our ability to operate this plant. So I think we just have to figure out what those alternatives are. And it's comforting to know, I think you mentioned, I want to say last year, that we were part of that consortium. So that's actually a good thing. But I think we need to know how we're going to get a handle on this at some point. So more information at some point you guys can report out. That'd be great. Okay, let's continue if there's no other comment. Okay.
That's the end of the presentation. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda.
Great. Director Romero?
Thank you, Chair. So the chemical usage, I guess what I'm looking at is first of all, this plant has been a success. The design has been a success. It's performing at a much higher level than we ever have, which is great. I think what might be nice to find out maybe once a year when we do this is, how is this plant performing in comparison to other local wastewater plants? That might be a good guideline on what we're doing in comparison to others. I know others are much larger, but it might be a nice way to, I don't know if that's readily available or not, but if it's gonna cause a lot of staff time, then just politely say so. And I don't want a lot of money spent on that, but I think it might be nice to incorporate in the future so that we sort of know where we compare at. Of course, I would have to, we all know that Ukraine produces a lot of fertilizer for the world. And I'm almost certain that maybe part of our cost might be from some of the areas that might be, it might be interesting to see where the chlorine's coming from. It might not be manufactured in the United States, might be coming from other parts. And so other than that, I mean, like I said, I think the plant is doing exactly what we all wanted it to do when we took the undertaking of redesign. Thank you.
Any comments, Councilman? Okay, so we'll take public comment. Mr. Tillman, do we have a card for this item?
No,
Okay,
we don't.
so Mr. Tillman, when you get a second, perfect. Thanks.
The email report that Hercules has available to email, is that possible? That way I can have a greater understanding of the one you offered. Okay. Here's my questions. Okay. For one, you talk about infiltration of water into the sewer system of Pinole. Since 2015 to 2000 till today, water has been running down on our side continuously. I call it East Bay mud. I also call it the city, and I had East Bay mud out this week and asked them about it. It's between 15 to 20 gallons per hour. That's a lot of water going down into our sewer system, or actually into our storm drains. And then also, there was also one on Ridgecrest, but they repaired that 2 or 3 years ago. That was actually leaking from the hill. I always thought that the reservoir above was allowing water to pass through the reservoir system. But East Bay Med said no, but I don't know that for a fact. On the question of waste, can we measure the waste solids that we had in 2018, compare them to 2019, 20, 22, 21, 22, and 23? Okay, that way we know how much waste products we have in Pinole. I don't know about Hercules, but Pinole, since it's highest than normal, that it'd be a question that could be answered in some of the questions I asked before. Water runoff, storm drains. Oh, yeah. Is it possible? We had a program that did infiltration in laterals. Can we do a program that is free to the public or something to find out, to get statistics, put a camera down them or whatever, and get those numbers and get the trouble areas? At least you would know where the trouble areas are, so we can get it under control. The only way you're going to be able to do that is doing it for free, because people don't have the money now to do anything other than try to survive. So if we can do that, maybe that could save us a lot more money in the production and process of the sewer plants activities. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. As Mr. Tillman was saying, waste, did he mean wastewater or solid waste? Were you talking about wastewater flow numbers?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Well, not the wastewater flow, the solids, because when you have a public use of a sewer plant and you have more people using the sewer, you're going to have more solids. You're talking about infiltration. You can't talk about flow because infiltration makes those numbers higher than they should be. So the only way you can measure a amount is by the number of solids that you have in your. Okay, I hope I made it clear. I'm not an expert at this.
I think I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
We're talking about hauling and any of the waste hauling that might happen from the plant from solids. I know our BOD and COD would probably indicate how much breakdown, right, we're getting from solids, but I think those numbers are reflected volume wise, I guess would be the hauling from the plant, but.
Yeah.
And
By the way, some plants are burning that and using the process of burning it to make electricity. Can we do that?
well, so we have a comment from Councilmember Thoms and I'd like Director make sure to comment, but they're good questions. We understand. All right, thank you.
That is a good question, but I want to ask staff is once the flow comes into the plant, it's combined, Pinole-Hercules, until you get the solid. So can you just clarify, we can get a total number of the solids, but by that time you can't break it down between Pinole-Hercules. Is that correct?
That's correct. Once the flow comes into the treatment plant and it makes it through the process of solids dewatering, the final product that's hauled to the landfill is combined for Pinole-Hercules. So it's not going to be a data point that we can say X amount comes from Pinole, X amount comes from Hercules.
Mike Roberts, Public Works Director. I might have something to add here. I understand the question correctly. It's really related to whether or not the flow's increasing when you don't have infiltration. I believe there is a way to measure dry weather flow, and there's meters at both pipes before they join and go into the plant. So I think there's an answer to the question. It's just a little different than how it was envisioned when it was phrased. So I do believe we can respond to that.
Just to add to the discussion, during the dry weather flow, I mean, the percentages of each of the cities, or whatever flow is coming to the plant, that would actually give you the proportion of solids as well. Yeah. But during wet weather flow, you just, it is just disparity. You will never know how much percentage of there. But during dry weather flow, that would give you a good idea.
Just make sure we're tasks. I think we're going into budget for the next item. So if it's good with board, we'll move on to item 6. I'm sorry. Yeah, item 6, fiscal year 23-24 budget. Director Mitchell.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay. I'm just going to read off from the agenda packet that we published. The Sewer Enterprise Fund and the Sewer Treatment Plant Fund is the operating budgets are shown in those agenda packet. And there is a slight changes to some of those numbers. And I'm not going to read through each of them, but if you have any questions, I can answer those, or our finance director, Marquisa Guillory, also present, and she can shed some insight to that. Maybe I'll just mention here, there were a few questions regarding the budget was asked through email. So we provided some details of the increase of some of the positions, why there was an increase of total staff cost. And there was there was administrative debit charges that which was responded to via email. There was general liability insurance question, which was increased by about 30%. And the response was provided as the premiums, the general liability and the workers' compensation has increased significantly. And yes, I can answer any questions on the operating budget if requested.
We'll turn it over to the board. Any budget questions, items?
Yes, we did get an email, and my concern was the 20% increase in salaries and wages for personnel. And I understand there was a comp study, but when we go down to the administrative debits, which I would imagine would be the accounting portion, there's only a 10% increase. So it just if there was a comp study, then it's sort of disproportionate. So is that saying that for years the wastewater plant people were underpaid? Because I know during the past we have seen increases. This has come before the board before, or the committee, and then to see a 21% increase in wages is a little alarming after there have been other increases along the way. So I don't want to delve into it, but I guess the comp study, is that published on the city site would be the first question. And if so, I guess I'll look at the comp study because that's a big increase.
I think we should talk about it. Director Guillory, if it's looking like you might have some information on that.
I think just the short answer is no, the classic comp study is not posted online. It is, we could get that information from the Human Resources Director for the study that was conducted. So just to add some context to that, there were a few different components. There was the regular cost of living adjustment for those staff, as well as bringing them up to market. In some cases, for some of the classifications, there was a 30% increase based on that study. So we could provide the results so that you can see the details behind that. But there were some significant increases that came about as a result of the study.
And I guess my other question is when on overtime, then if there's that much of an increase, then how come the overtime doesn't reflect the 17 or 20% increase then? Because if the employee had a bump in that, then the overtime is going to have a bump also, but it's at 1%.
Yeah, overtime fluctuates. So
I
because
understand
of that,
but,
yeah, just
but the
looking at-
price on it is my concern. Okay, is the amount that you're showing 36,000 is not reflective of the comp increase that you took of 20%. So, and it could even be higher if some of those employees that are on overtime are getting 30%. So that was.
So are you suggesting that budget be increased to
Well,
represent the 12%?
If we're saying that the salaries went up, then if overtime's gone up, then yes, those
Right.
salaries should reflect, the overtime. So you're not charging overtime at the old hourly rate. So
Director Mishra, can you comment? Because I think didn't we have new hires or?
We do have new hires, but the number of positions have not changed.
Not changed. Okay.
So for the overtime, the only caveat to that is that's just a number that we have a dollar amount budgeted. That's not the actual dollar spent for the overtime. It was just carried over from the last year, but that's not the actual overtime for the last year or this year. It's just a budgeted amount.
it's just a place marker.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then Was there any more you wanted to add?
Oh, no, that was it for me, unless you have questions for me.
I also had a question about the legal fee showing up at 15,000. Is there, it hasn't been like that in the past, and it was just, I mean, it's a small amount, but the question is, are you contemplating some sort of legal, something going on legally that City of Hercules should also know? Or is it just another placeholder in the budget?
Yeah, I would say it's a placeholder. I think there was something on the PG&E that may have already been completed with the claim with respect to PG&E.
Yeah, well, we're not gonna hold our breath when it comes to PG.
Yeah.
Okay. And other than that, I mean, you know, my other concern was the liability. Yeah, you know, I guess my question was, does Pinole belong to MPA?
Yes,
Okay, so an MPA for residents, every city has their own loss ratio and gets charged according to that.
Mhm.
So obviously, there were some claims that were made, so that we didn't have it hurt. So, all right, so that's an explanation. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Other council members? I know we're taking both the budget and capital. Are there any, and Councilmember Romero just brought a document that had additional capital projects that may have been legacy projects that for whatever reason, and I know this happens with all organizations, is you're dealing with the priorities of the day. And a lot of those projects, capital tend to fall further back. Is there been any efforts, or what could there be any efforts to try to complete that capital list, even if it is deferred maintenance, just to make sure that it's of record? I know that funding is usually set budget wise, and we move forward through the year with planned projects and things come up. But if there's opportunities, and the Director Commissioner, we talked about as a grant opportunities, anything that could help elevate the women's locker room is a good example of something that might have been, you know, if it's on our list, we can keep kind of a broader net when we're looking at grants or any other sources of income. Can that be incorporated in the next round of budgeting, or is it too soon to try to get it onto this list?
For our CIP project, we are pretty much locked into what we
Committed to.
committed to. Yeah,
But that
and-
doesn't stop us from projecting the rest of this.
yeah. I mean, for the next future years, yes, we can always add on those projects and, try to complete those.
Great. Okay. Any further?
Were we gonna talk about the CIP or?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's,
Okay, all right, then
Yeah.
I'll hold my question.
so we'll get through the full presentation and then take public comment.
Okay. Capital projects, I don't think I have the slides up there, but I do have in the agenda packet. There's a summary of sheet for the capital improvement plan for what we are proposing for 23-24 through 27-28. Most of the capital projects are carried over from the last year. The first one is effluent outfall, and this CIP is continued from the previous year, and it is a shared cost for both city of Pinole and Hercules. We have not really started significant work on this. We are looking to have a consultant on board for the design work. Next project, the secondary clarifier rehab. This is also being carried forward from the last year. We did have some progress in this. We actually had a consultant come and take a look at it and provide us a proposal for the cost of that. And we also had the manufacturer of the equipment come and take a look at it and provide us some understanding of what a new cost of a new equipment for that secondary clarifier would be. So we haven't made a decision so we'll be, if we go through the design proposal, then we'll update this effort, but we haven't made a decision about that yet. The project 2102 air release valve replacement, which is going to get completed this fiscal year. So it will not appear further, but we are hoping it to complete by June or early July. The water pollution control plant lab remodel, we haven't been able to progress much on this. This will be another activity for this year. The last one is the infrastructure assessment project, which we talked about last year. And this is the recycled water feasibility. So currently, City of Pinole is have a RFP out and have obtained proposals from a few companies who would be doing the recycled water feasibility for this for City of Pinole as well as neighboring communities. And this is the cost of RFP and all that is not part of any agreed between the shared cost between the City of Pinole and Hercules. But if City of Hercules wanted to part of it at a later date, that is, we welcome that. So that my end of presentation for CIP projects. I'm happy to take in questions on this.
Okay, Councilmember Tom.
Yes, thank you for the report. I'm just wondering if on future budgets, if we can break out the sanitary sewer part of the capital improvement plan into shared costs and Pinole only costs. That way we would have a total and we would have a better idea. So I would just say for future. I mean, it's obvious that, you have the asterisk, but we don't have the totals. Thank you.
Councilmember Romero.
Thank you, Chairman. I would agree. I think I added maybe $700,000 in improvements. Might be more. And so going through some of these going through this now that we have the peer review, I would like to see like the effluent outfall, I think was part of a concern. I don't know if that has to do with the deep water all the way back to Rodeo. So I think we've talked about that. And so it doesn't quite mention that. And so if that's come before the committee, then we should maybe asterisk that, it's been before the committee before and we were okay with it so that we know. I think that is important because several years ago that line saved our butts because there was probably $17 million gallons of untreated that flowed in there until we could treat it during a big storm event. So I would like to know, like the secondary clarifier rehabilitation, that is a concern because that was part of the reconstruction. So here we are a year or two down the line, and now we're doing an update to the tune of 425,000. And I want to know what's going on. And so, so there are some things in here, and we should be checking with Corolla Engineering. They're the ones that were project manager on this, and find out what's going on. I also thought that the plant, part of the plant upgrade was a remodel of the lab, because that lab was absolutely ancient. And so again, we're 1 or 2 years down the line, and now we're finding out that the equipment that was part of the upgrade was not replaced. So those are key things that, as on the committee, I thought these were being taken care of and addressed, because absolutely it was correct that we needed to upgrade that lab. And I thought we did it and now I'm finding out that something was missed. So those are those things that, that's why we hired a construction manager. And if there's an issue with the construction manager didn't take care of this, then I think both cities should know that. And so I don't know how other committee members feel about that, but I think staff should first find out what's going on and then maybe. Thank you.
Councilmember Grimsley?
A related question is there for each of these projects, a project plan document that would identify which components have already been completed and what it's yet to be completed that could be distributed?
So are you asking about the CIP project?
For each of the project plans, is there a plan document that indicates the completed items and the yet to be completed items, like a project plan document, project management document?
Okay, understood. Some of these actually haven't gone to development of a plan or a document in a drawing stage, but we may have a report saying the status and all. Yeah.
Go ahead. Okay. So along those lines is kind of what I was thinking as well, is that during the project, I know that the lab was value engineered out. We're balancing quality of project with cost of project, right? Several things could have been air release valves. There are items that a decision was made during the project in order to make sure that we cross the finish line with substantial completion. What I'm trying to understand to Councilmember Romero and Councilmember Grimsley's point, and I think Councilmember Thomas, I'm sure you feel the same way, is that those items still need to be done at some point. There was a decision made during the project to do them at a later date and capitalize that over time. That way we see those cost spending drop, right? But those dollars still go up over time, right? These things don't get cheaper. And so what we're trying to understand is, what does that list look like? How do we take any surplus budget and this board understand that, hey, these are items that are prioritized through your direction, and try to allocate the funding so that those get done. Also, we need to know what that dollar impact is. And I think the citizens need to know that dollar impact as well. What we don't want to be is in a situation where these items come up, something breaks, the plant is in trouble, and we're scrambling to try to make decisions on how much to spend. And usually those costs are about 10% more just because it's an emergency. So I know that we're doing a lot of good work here. I'm just trying to understand, like, let's not wait until something happens. And if we are running short on money, we need to have that discussion with our respective cities and really start that conversation as early as possible. Did I capture kind of where we're at?
Yes, Chair, I agree. So coming out of the remodel, we should have had a list of priority, what didn't get done. And I don't think that's been published.
Right.
I think that's what you're likely trying to do.
Mhm.
So, and then we also, as you're doing with your CIP, looking for future. But it seems like the CIP that I'm looking at right now is all designated for 23, 24. So there, a CIP is usually future stuff that's coming up. And what I'm seeing on here is 4 or 5 items that need to get done. So it's not the future, it's current. But as the elected officials, we're not seeing what came out of the remodel and what was left over needed to be addressed. The clarifiers maybe didn't get that, but I'm not the professional. I'm the elected, as we all are. So we need some sort of a report stating what didn't get completed, what was projected to get done, have a priority list on that. I think that's what Chair Todd's going to get to.
Right.
And then get the cost to us. So we know. So
Great.
And I would be in agreement with that. So so if we don't have to meet, If that comes before the city council, then I would be somewhat okay with that. And if the council doesn't mind me showing up and making comments as a committee member, that, you know,
I think that's where it kind of lands, is that ultimately this committee's formed to try to dive into the weeds of the wastewater plant and then kind of distill that back up to our council level. But I think this committee is, as you see, is we're seeing projects that are that high level projects already been elevated to, hey, we got to get this done for this year. But what we don't want to do is miss those legacy projects in this committee and then elevating that to the council. So, Director, make sure you had a comment.
Yeah, just to add to the discussion. After the project was completed, there was a technical memorandum prepared for the various tasks or various activities the plant needs. But actually, city manager has suggested that we should hire actually a consultant to complete that task. It was not really, the technical memorandum was developed internally, but we wanted somebody outside the company to come who would actually be much valuable input. We will give them whatever our internal assessment that will definitely give them a head start. But we want to hire somebody to complete that assessment and provide us those project lists to complete.
I
to
see.
put in.
So you might have a list, but
Yeah.
you don't have any rough order magnitude.
Exactly, yeah,
numbers to
those
it.
details we
Got
don't,
it.
yeah.
Okay. Understood. Okay. So if there's no other comment, I think,
Do we need to take action on these two items?
No, these are for information and if there is any direction to us, we're happy to take.
so we'll take public comment.
Yep.
Thank you again. My comment basically, I understand it. The upgrades were done, but not enough. We may have to add to them. My question would be is how much is that going to be on the ratepayer? We need to review that, as well as townhouses and condos in our city get a break. They should have to pay like single families have to pay. And the reason why they always said is because they didn't have a lot of laterals. And the wastewater was getting more from single families than condos and townhouses, which I don't see the logic in that. They both have either 1 or 2 or 3 toilets, and they should have to pay as I pay. So we need to review that and make that compensation. So that way the city gets more money, not very much, but more money for thank you.
This public comment. Let's see where we are. All right, so we have item 7. Moving on to item 7, new connections, verbal from Pinole-Hercules.
There are no new connections to report except some of the development projects which are ongoing right now. When they're complete, those will be considered new connections.
Hercules has no new connections to report over this reporting period.
Okay. It doesn't show any new agenda items, or I'm wondering if any of the committee members have any discussion items they'd like to see this committee look at. No? Okay. All right.
Actually, I just have one item. There was a speaker at East Bay Leadership a couple of months ago, and I just forwarded the recording of that to Mr. Mishra. And I'm hoping he can distribute that. And the genesis of, or, the speaker talked about wastewater and water quality in the bay and long-term new permit requirements that will be coming down the line. So if he forwards that, take a look. It's interesting for kind of long-term planning of wastewater. Recall it was more in the 15 to 20 years.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other comment, we'll go ahead and move to item 8, adjournment to the regular subcommittee meeting of September 7th, 2023. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.